Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning in today. We're just going to let some people filter in from the waiting room before we get started. Just giving people, I don't know, maybe 30 more seconds or so, and then we'll get started. All right, I'm going to go ahead and kick us off today. I imagine we'll have a few more people filter in here as the clock has turned to 2 o'clock. But this webinar is being recorded, so you'll get a copy of it later. But welcome today. I am Sarah Miller. I am SBAM's Vice President of Operations. We're pleased you've chosen to spend an hour of your time with us today. A couple of housekeeping items. I mentioned that this is being recorded and Frank is supplying us with the slides. So either later today or tomorrow, we'll be able to send to you the recording and the slides, and they'll be made available on our website as well. The chat is open. If you do come up with some questions and you want to ask, you can save them for the end, or you can ask them in the chat, but Frank is going to answer them at the conclusion of his program. So with that, I would like to turn it over to Frank Cox. Frank, I know you have a little bio slide and you're going to do an intro to yourself, but we just want to say thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate you and iCOR. So with that, Frank, take it away.
Awesome. Thank you, Sarah. I'm so excited to be here today. And it's interesting when people ask me about SBAM, we have the opportunity to look at and join a lot of different organizations and associations. And I just find that over the last few years, SBAM has been just world class. So thank you very much, Sarah and Olivia and the team that put this all together. And welcome all of you that are here. I know in our society today, it's like, how do we develop this thriving workforce? Well, we're going to talk about that. So as we walk through this, like Sarah said, afterwards, we'll send some slides out. You might have a question at some point in time during the webinar. Hold off till the end. We'll answer some of those questions. So I'm excited to be here today, and I'm excited for SBAM's opportunity to present to you today. But before we get into it, I really want to call out a couple different areas because there's been this pretty big shift from COVID till back to office to right now. And I mean, you can read different books, listen to different podcasts, go to different seminars, and we're in this state of change. So the stuff I'm going to talk about is relevant today, and I do want to call out a couple resources as we work through this. One of them, I just recently had read a book, Why Are We Here, by Jennifer Moss. Great book. You can look at some of her podcasts, just great information. And I'm a big fan of constant learning. So that's a really good shout out there. And the one thing she talks about consistently is beyond developing skills and focusing on productivity, which we all need. Employees are looking for things like hope and purpose and community. So we're going to talk about some of those items as we go through today's webinar. So there's going to be 3 questions I want to ask you up front to get you thinking, and you can interact, like I said, and at the end you can comment on this. So when you look at these 3 areas of building that thriving workforce, the one thing that will never change, I know there's some on here, there's manufacturers probably on here, there's construction workers, there's consultants, I know there's some people from iCOR on here, but the one thing that is very, very vital is having a vision. So we'll talk a little bit about that. We'll talk about today's current reality and some of those next steps. So when you look at vision and aspirations and you want that collective workforce, here's a question for you. When you envision that ideal workforce for your organization, what does the collective impact look like on your business's future growth? Can you see that? So if you had the team that you would like to have over the next 3, 5, or 10 years, how would that affect your growth? Who would lead that? Is it sustainable? Is it systematic? And so I'm going to tell you some stories as we go through here because There's a saying that I'm really fond of, and it's methods are many, principles are few. Methods always change, principles never do. So as we go through different methods, realize it always goes back to that one main principle. Do you or do your leaders have that clear vision and aspirations to get better every single day? And then the next one is your current reality. So you can write this down on a piece of paper, put it in the chat or whatever at some point in time. But on a scale of 1 to 10, how effectively are we or you fostering a workplace where your teams feel valued, supported, and motivated? So write that down because we want to hear from you. The one thing is, I want to caution you, motivation is kind of like a shower. And you might think, oh my word, what are you talking about? Well, motivation is something only lasts for a short period of time. It's different from inspiring or encouraging, but what are you doing on a daily basis with your workforce to motivate them? And there's all kinds of motivators. Typically, people are motivated by one of three things. There's words of affirmation, right? Recognition for an individual. Number two is material things or monetary things. And the third one is purpose. And we'll talk a little bit about purpose today. So as we transition to the third question, what's the most critical question on your mind today concerning how to empower your team with a stronger sense of hope, purpose, and community? And when people see the word purpose or community, I think it's been watered down. And we're going to talk about not just the purpose of the founders of the company or the leaders of the company, but the purpose of the individual that's working at that organization. So we're going to hit on these three. So once I said, let's recap this. Here's the three questions I want going through your mind is envision your ideal workforce, scale of 1 to 10, how effective are you at this? And then what's most critical on a go forward basis for you and your organization on addressing some of those items. So here's the content. We often shift into telling you what this is about today because people say, well, what are we going to talk about? Well, I'm going to give just a really quick precursor of iCOR and who we are so you know our credibility, our history, and where we've been. That's going to be really short. We're going to talk about how to attract top talent. Like I said, there's methods, there's principles. Number three is how do you retain them? How do you retain your best employees? Number four is developing your workforce. How do you develop that workforce? And like I said at the end, hold your questions for the end. We'll have some Q&A. Little bio about myself. I've been in the industry, the business world for over 30 years. I've worked for multiple large insurance brokerage firms. I've worked for manufacturing companies. I worked for companies like Siemens and Rapistan, which is Dematic now. I worked for companies like Hub International, USI, and then for a very large growing investment banking firm called Marshberry. So that's my background. I've done everything from on the floor manufacturing to HR to lower level management, supervision, lead man, middle management, upper management. I've been on the side of ESOPs. I've been blessed to do a lot of different things in a lot of different areas. I've spoken around the country, internationally. So, and then I'm homegrown in Michigan, born and raised here in Grand Rapids. Played football at Grand Valley State University and Grand Rapids Community College years ago. I have 4 children. They're all girls except 3. Some of you get that later, but just really, I'm a small business owner myself here in Michigan. And then we have another office down in Cleveland. So we have a staff of around 10 or 12 based off the projects. And we're a growing organization. So we're experiencing some of these same things. So we're not just going to talk about it. We're actually doing it as well. And then when you look at iCOR, we have a really simple mission. We like to challenge our prospects, inspire them to make those changes that they've told us that they want to change to grow. And iCOR stands for improving capital. That's the I and the O. And then optimizing risk, or the I and the C, improving capital and then optimizing risk. And on one side, we help organizations improve their capital. There's people capital, there's operational capital. We don't get into all the banking stuff. We can refer you to other sources. But often we help you improve your capital. And then from there, we can help you optimize your risk. But at the core of what we do, we're an insurance broker that offers these resources that differentiates us from others. And people get really excited when they come here because they think you're different, you're better. I can feel it when they walk into our office. I'm in one of our offices today. When they walk in, we don't have walls up. We have an open space. The colors are for a certain reason. We interact. We have white noise. We have different things going on because we know the value of having a culture that makes people feel excited and vibrant. So that's a little bit about us. So some of the top challenges here that we see in today's environment or with attracting some of this talent and retaining them, I'm going to talk about some of them here. And the first one is the competition. I don't want you to get caught up into like focusing on your competition, but understand your competition. Especially for those that are on this call, you're going to be competing with some larger organizations that throw a lot of money and resources at individuals, but a lot of times it's smoke and mirrors. Just understand who the competition is. Because what you'll find, and I have found it in my tenure, if you're talking to someone, you're trying to find that talent and they're worried about just pay, that's a trigger. That's a sign that you might be getting into something you don't want to get into. So it's not just about compensation. That is only one variable. But understand who your competition is. Number two is from a small business owner, I know you have limited HR resources. I get it. But realize this, there are so many resources out there. I know that some of you talk to Lisa Cooper. We'll talk about some stuff later. There's all different types of HR resources out there. So just don't let that be a hindrance, but understand that you have to be aware of those items. So you have to get your house in order as you move forward, from onboarding plans to career pathing, things of that nature. And in the beginning, you don't have to be really sophisticated. There's a couple little tools and resources that we help some of our smaller clients with. And then as they graduate, there's some more sophisticated tools and resources. And then you get over to employee impact, okay? The contribution of each employee is critical for the company's survival. So these individuals, when we talk about improving capital, they're an investment to your survival. And you can't look at them like a number. You have to look at them like they're a part of your team. They're a part of your organization. They're part of the fabric of who you are. And I'll pause here for a second. We had this conversation earlier today in our office. And if you're taking notes, maybe you'll get a few nuggets out of this, maybe you won't. But I would like everybody to write down this acronym. It's BGIIP. BGIIP. And what that stands for is be genuinely interested in people. And when you're interviewing folks and you're out and about, really be interested genuinely in who they are and what they bring to the table. Okay? Because if you're not, you're going to set the stage right up front for an individual that is uncertain about different things. And there's this new phobia that if you're not genuinely interested in them, that they're going to lean into this camp, what's called FOBO, right? A lot of you have heard FOMO, the fear of missing out, right? Missing out on the job or whatever. What we're finding now is people are moving around more than ever with jobs. But once they start in an organization, they have what's called FOBO now, fear of being obsolete. And we don't want them to have the fear of being obsolete. We want them to come on board and feel valued, feel like there's hope, there's purpose. But it starts right in the beginning when you're looking for some of those talented individuals. The next challenge, or some of the challenges that we see from finding the talent, is understanding the statistics that you're up against. Okay, you look at the average turnover rate in different industries is roughly around 30% if you aggregate it. So out of 10 people you hire, 7 of them are moving around. And I've experienced watching this as most organizations really court them hard in the beginning, and once they get them in, they kind of forget about them or just feel like things are just going to happen naturally. It won't, because we have recruiters that are so good. And the thought process I tell our team is, if you're doing a really good job and iCOR is doing a really good job of promoting you, especially on social media, then you're going to get phone calls. I talk about it with our employees. We just happened. It just happened recently. One of our folks, Wesley Trimp, I told him, I said, you're going to get calls a lot once you start getting credibility and start to get some social media presence. And sure enough, a couple of weeks ago, he's out on the golf course. And he said to me, he said, Frank, these other organizations, they're not even bashful about it. They came right up to him and said, hey, have you ever thought about moving to organizations or going here? And even to the point where he said they were throwing out numbers at him on salaries. So realize if you have good talent and you find good talent and you grow that talent, they're going to get phone calls. They're going to be talking to people. And the stats show that. The next thing is the cost to replace those employees can range from a half to 2 times their annual salary. So you don't want to do a lot of churning and burning. That is a very expensive hobby to be going through. So I'm a fan of slow to hire, quick to make changes. What do I mean by that? And there are different things that we do when we hire individuals. We do multiple interviews. I don't just hang my hat on assessments. There's all kind of assessments you can use. There's the Omnia, the Divine, the Briggs, the Myers-Briggs, the Culture Index. I mean, I go on and on. There's all these different assessments that you can use, but also you have to see people in action. Because right now in our day and age, people are getting very good at interviewing and they tell you what you want to hear. And then they got AI to actually write the resumes. So you can't just base it off from that. But realize if you're part of a team and like if you don't have some of the ownership stake in an organization, any type of shareholder value, it's very expensive on the organization. So I just want you to be aware of that. And then you have 31% of new employees quit in their first 6 months. Right? They get in, it's exciting in the beginning, you're courting them. And then if you don't do it right, you don't have a clear onboarding plan, development plan, a buddy system, things we'll talk about, they start talking to people. And it can be the simplest things that get people really irritated, right? It's that after effect of, oh, the dating is over. And there's a term that I heard years ago, and I'm going to tell you a few stories throughout the day. There's a term that I heard that is so true, and it's called quietly quitting. And I'm going to tell you a story. So I was a couple years ago, we hired an individual, super excited in the beginning. We talked about our value proposition statement of the company, our mission, our core values, which our core values, number one is have fun. Have fun. And part of having fun is dreaming big. Okay. So this person came in. It was hard at first for them to dream big, have fun. They thought I was strange because I would do different things. I'm kind of strange sometimes. A little putting contest, basketball contest, right? We ride carts around Grand Rapids. We just do simple things. So we have fun. Number 2 of our core values is get results. Growth oriented. Okay. So are you getting results? And it's not just means that you're actually running new business. It's like, are you getting little victories every single day, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. And then number 3 is pursue your purpose. So if you do those 3 things, right, and you come in, the chances of reducing the first 6 months are really high. But if you think they get it after 30 days and they're just going to be like all fired up and excited about the core values after 60, 90 days when the work sets in, it's not going to happen. So this individual was working here for about 6-8 months, super excited in the beginning. Wife was excited, never worked for a company like this before, didn't know these types of organizations existed, really talked about how collaborative we are, had one-on-one meetings on a weekly basis. And then all of a sudden, there weren't a lot of questions coming out of them. On our one-on-ones, I'd ask them, how's it going? Our team, how's it going? Everything's going fine. Be careful with the word fine. Everything's going fine. Yeah, it's good. Just trying to figure out my role. So then what we did is we changed the role a little bit because we're constantly looking at individuals and saying, hey, what gets you excited this week? Okay, what got you excited this week? What stressed you out this week? And then what can we do to help you? So those are basically 3 questions we like to ask our team. What got you lit up this week? That'd be the first one. What got you lit up? Right? Number 2 is what stresses you out? And then number 3, what can we do to help you be the best you can be? So this individual, even though we were doing those things, this individual over a period of time started talking to recruiters. The recruiters started throwing big money at him. And I said to our team, I said, hey, I think so-and-so is quietly quitting because they're getting quiet in meetings. They're not responding like they used to. The hunger is fading away. So I'm just going to let you know, these are some challenges you're going to face. Even when you're doing the things, all these things the right way, it's going to happen to you and it can happen to you. And the statistics prove that. So as we transition here and we say, okay, so those are some of the challenges. What are we going to do to attract some of this top talent? How are you unique and different than your competition? How do you communicate that? Right? It's not just going down to the local vinyl company and putting it on your wall that this is your mission, here's your core values. No, 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 no. They have to feel it, they have to see it, has to be in action. And the first one is your company culture. So if I helicoptered into your company and I went up to anyone from the front line to someone that has been there for years and I said, define your core values. Could they tell me? If I said, hold on, wait a second. So talk to me about Brian Callie. What are his core values? Do you see? And I'm picking on Brian a little bit because Brian's awesome. And so if I ask Brian, what are Brian's core values? So not only what are the individual's core values, what's the leadership's core values? Are they aligned? Do they talk about employee engagement and just send out surveys and do nothing with them? Or does that individual say, yes, we do employee surveys and we come back and we actually talk about them. Okay. Or the culture just feels different when you walk into our company. One of the biggest indicators for me over the years of being a consultant and working with different organizations is I hear people say, I can't define the culture. It just feels different. Okay. That means to me, if it feels different, there's someone that's valuing those individuals as people and they're supporting them and they're also motivating them on a daily basis. So what are the core cultural values of your organization? The next one is your employee value proposition. And this goes beyond salary. Okay. When someone joins your organization, do they know that, hey, I can grow with the organization? I got some work-life balance, right? There's a concept that's been out there for years, and Jennifer Moss talks about this, so I give her credit. She said, there's this mindset that it's a badge of honor to work really hard late at night, especially after our kids go to bed. And it sounds great. Right? You're home at night and your kids are in bed and you decide, hey, I'm gonna have a glass of wine and I'm gonna get on my computer. But you're not really present, but you kind of are, and you're just checking the box. You got to be careful. Okay, you got to be careful because maybe if you're working in an organization where you came home a little bit earlier, got some things tidied up and taken care of, went back to work, where you got home that evening instead of jumping on having a glass of wine, which there's nothing wrong with that. Maybe you're spending more quality time on some mental thought or exercise or with your family members. You just got to find a way to have that work-life balance. I'll pick on us again. We have individuals here that I don't often ask them where they are. I just know we have a clear structure in place on metrics and processes and huddles. And I often will say to them, I don't care where you go. You could be at home, you could be at the office. We'd love to have you in here. And also, if you have life issues, just let us know. But your organization needs to know that there's some flexibility. Why? Because we went from the COVID space to where everyone went home, and then everybody came back, and people are like 8 to 5, and now they're at their desk 67% of their time, and they're isolating. You don't want that. You want interaction. One thing Jennifer says in her book and some of her podcasts, if an individual has about a 20-minute lunch someday with somebody else, the trust goes way up. They're interacting with other individuals because we're individuals that desire relationships. And does this appeal to those that you're looking at? Now I'll shift gears for a second because this just happened to an organization that I'm aware of. It was an open environment, very vibrant colors, very collaborative nature. And the person that they were interviewing doesn't like that. They wanted an office. They want time to focus. So you got to understand it goes both ways. So you might be trying to create a culture that doesn't fit everybody. Make sure you figure that out on the front end. And then you got social media. And if you look at the screen here, I want to really emphasize a couple of things. When you're out on social media, just be super careful. Okay. Um, I think it's very important that you demonstrate employees' achievements. For example, not too long ago, individual on our team actually ran a 100K marathon. So we posted that and we talked about how that connects to our core values. Okay. And then purpose. Does what they do every day have purpose? Now I want to pause here for a second because what I've studied and learned is it's not that working at iCOR is helping me live my purpose necessarily if I'm an account manager, a CSR, and a consultant, whatever. But people want to know, does what I do today have purpose? Okay. For example, pick on us. If ensuring a company has purpose, it matters because if a business doesn't have insurance, they can go under. So does that individual feel like their purpose, they're doing something that's purposeful? If they do, highlight that. Highlight that in social media, but have some discernment. And then that strong community bond within your team. I'm one that if I feel like there's a lot of like competition's great, but if I feel like there's animosity or someone on the team is feeling deprived, whatever, it just means that we're not intentional about building that connection with our employees. Okay, you want competition because the right competition breeds cooperation. But just be careful how you use social media. Make sure it's trying to hit on building hope, purpose, and a community with your organization. And then you have community involvement. This is a no-brainer. There's a lot of folks that do this really well. I won't call them out, but you should be doing nonprofit work, serving in different areas. And if you do some of that, you can highlight that on social media. You can call it out. You can build it up. That's totally okay. But I would encourage you to have a strategy because this can often, if and I know there's some HR folks, there should be some on here, this can burn out the HR team, right? And it doesn't need to be like flavor of the week, always doing an event. Maybe you pick one or two. Maybe you listen to your employees and say, hey, what's near and dear to your heart? What gets you excited? Okay. And it doesn't always have to come from top down. I would encourage you to have it come from the bottom up. So as we shift gears here, you can read the screen. I won't read it for you, but so you're looking for those employees, you're trying to attract them, and then how do you retain them? How do you retain those individuals? And if you're not careful, what happens is some of the people that you hire that really know your mission, know your value prop, understand how to communicate collaboratively. What can happen is you can kind of get lazy on your interaction with them. And there's an effect to that. And then what happens is if they don't feel valued, if they don't feel supported and motivated and stretched and encouraged and they leave, that could be a trickle effect with others. So you got to be super careful there. So when you talk about retaining top talent, you have to continue to focus on that positive, engaging work environment. I talked a little bit about culture. Let's talk about communication and collaboration. There's basically 4 personality styles, no matter if you take, like I said, the Myers-Briggs, the Omnia, the Divine, the Culture Index, doesn't matter. There's a book that I like, it's old school, and it's called The 5 Love Languages in the workplace. Okay. So for example, does someone like to be communicated one-on-one? Does someone like to be edified or lifted up in front of individuals? Does someone like you to do things for them? Okay. How are you communicating to them? That is so vital. And then from a collaboration standpoint, there are some that want to be invited to meetings, others that don't. They don't like to be in big meetings, right? For example, I don't get invited to a lot of operational meetings because I'll be a disruptor. Okay. That's who I am. I'm a high D, I'm a high I. So if you look at the disc, I'm a very results-oriented person, very influential. So when I come to those meetings, if we get into details and operations and all that kind of stuff, can I do it? Yes. But do I like to do it? No. So just understand when you create that environment, it could be understanding the dynamics of the personalities of who are coming to those meetings. Okay, that's big on communication. The other thing is follow through. Are you following up? Is your HR team leading these meetings? Are you rotating them? What do you call them? I'm a big fan of not calling them meetings. We call them huddles, right? It's probably because I'm a sports guy, ex-football player, all beat up, bad shoulders, bad knees, but we call them huddles. It's just like a sports team. After every play, you kind of huddle up. And you like to ask open-ended questions. Sally, Tom, Jennifer, hey, so what'd you think? What'd you think about what we talked about earlier? Hey, what are we doing tomorrow with that client? What got you excited last week? Okay, so just create that environment where people can be transparent. And then go further is that feedback's important. That active feedback, active listening. So make sure when you get the feedback, you do something with it. And you got to do this on a regular basis. And you have to be transparent. Now, there's a difference between being transparent and confidential. Talk to the HR folks, but you got to make sure if Sally or Tom comes up with a really good idea and brings it to the table, A, give them credit. B, talk about it amongst the team, and then act upon it. That can be a big demotivator if you don't act upon it and you go, you know what, I'll get to that later. Yep, that was a great question. We'll get to that later. Eventually, people stop coming to you with ideas or questions. And then the third one is recognize and reward employees. And this goes beyond compensation. I'm all about compensation, gift cards, raises, bonuses, equity, all of that. Have some fun. I'm going to show you something that we do from time to time, and it's called the Growth Igniter. Okay, so when you look at this, it's pretty heavy. And it says on here, challenge, inspire, and grow. Right? You can strap it on to these individuals, doesn't matter who it is, right? We do little trophies and we lift up what people are doing right and do some recognition. Make a big deal out of it. Because everybody likes to be appreciated and rewarded for their hard work and their effort. Because here's what happens typically. You get all excited, you come to an organization, you get into the rut of doing stuff, and then the employee thinks, man, is what I'm doing, does it matter? Do I have to do something very extreme to get recognized? No. I would encourage you to do little things. Another thing that we do, and Jennifer Moss talks about this, is figuring out how to reward people on daily efforts and behaviors. So if you're taking notes again, here's another acronym that we use called, I use it called Giddy Up. And I spell it, it's Growth Igniter Daily Habits. So GIDH/UP. Giddy Up. So it's the Growth Igniter Daily Habits. So we want to recognize someone for doing something good. Let's just say, for example, they actually set an appointment that day with a really hard prospect. I'll say, well, giddy up, great job. Or let's just say they got done reading a book and they talked about how it's helping them be a better dad or husband or wife or whatever, cousin or employee. Giddy up. It's excited. That's a behavior that is a growth behavior. Because if you stay on this topic for a second, there's two types of approaches. Okay. There's a growth mindset, and there's a fixed mindset. So we encourage others to have a growth mindset. So when you call something out, you name it, right? Hey, Sarah, you did really good at this. I'm excited that you completed that certificate. Man, that's really going to help you your next step. And then celebrate it, recognize it and celebrate it. And then you can also throw some rewards on it. But you don't need to go to extremes and start throwing a bunch of money at folks, because as small business owners, you can't afford that. But the one thing I want to caution you is don't just say things like, hey, Zach, good job. Hey, Sarah, good job. That's a fixed mindset. That absolutely means nothing. And it'll wear people out for a while. They're like, yeah, you don't really mean it. You have to have that growth mindset to say, hey, nice job with getting that deliverable done on time, getting out to the employees. Hey, great job with getting that net promoter score back from our new client and sharing it with the team, because that'll help them realize that what I'm doing matters on my day-to-day process. And then it gives them hope that if I keep doing this, man, I can do bigger things. Okay. And then next, provide opportunities for professional growth. And we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But we constantly say to our employees, like, if you're not growing, then you're falling back. And I'm a big reader. I know there's multiple people on our team that are big readers. I think it's a lost skill or art, whatever you want to call it, is you should spend time reading, not just on the internet, grabbing good books, grabbing information, letting your mind relax. Okay. And then encouraging those to grow and learn. And we'll talk about some of those resources in a minute. So when you look at this, create a positive and engaging work environment, foster open communication, recognize and reward employees for their contribution. Everybody's contribution matters. And then provide opportunities for professional growth. Cast that vision of, hey, if you keep doing these things, Logan, you could be here, here, and here. Okay. I had a gentleman that told me years ago, and he was wrong. And he said something to me that I thought about. And then as I was reading Jennifer's book and listening to some of her stuff, she said, hope is a strategy. And I thought to myself, I was told years ago that hope's not a strategy. Well, I think what the person meant to say is hope's not a plan, because hope is a strategy. Because every day you want to build hope into people that they can be this, they can be that. And you encourage them. So every day they come in, they hope that they can get better every day and be a valuable asset to your organization. So it's vital that they understand that. So when you develop your workforce, now you're shifting gears. So you found them, you attracted them, you brought them on board. They understand your mission, your goals, your core values. Now let's talk about developing the workforce. Okay. One thing is have a practical and budget-friendly training process. Now, be careful with who you have leading this, because some people are good at it, some people aren't. There's a lot of different tools and resources. As you can see on the screen there, you can do this through lunch and learns, peer-to-peer training. And there, believe it or not, there's a lot of free online resources for this. So do your due diligence. Reach out to us, talk to the SBAM. There's several organizations. You don't have to break the bank to train people. Okay. The next one is, which to me is super vital, is mentorship programs. And I want to share with you that mentorship programs are different than coaching programs. Mentorship is different than coaching. There's a lot of similarities, but they're different. And if you want to have conversations after this or coffee, I can talk about it. But you want to make sure whoever you do assign to mentor your staff, your people, that you help equip them on how to mentor. I'll tell you another story. He's retired now. This guy's name's Jim. I worked with him, at a firm one time, and he was known as a mentor. He was actually a tormentor, because he was someone that they put into that role because he had experience and tenure, and he knew what he was doing. But what I found after a short period of time, that everybody that I knew of that met with him, they felt defeated after sitting down with him, because the way he talked to them. And I think he was oblivious to it to a degree. And here's a little test for you if you put someone into mentoring roles. Have them ask this question to the mentee, or think about it. When someone leaves them, do they feel better or worse for the experience? So if someone left the mentorship, did they feel better or worse for the experience? And if you don't get consistency that they're feeling better, then that's a trigger. And there's ways to help someone be a mentor. But if that person is not learning and growing and trying to get better, just because they've been around forever doesn't mean they can be a good mentor. And then cross-training. Cross-training is vital, okay? It increases flexibility. And I understand that someone might have been hired to do X job and they can't do Y that well. That's okay. But I would constantly be cross-training. We do that at iCOR. There's not a job that our president, Zach, or myself, or Wes, or Seth, there's not a job that we can't do or we're not teaching them to do, okay? Because you have to have that flexibility, especially with all the different changes in our environment from, remember the sick time stuff and all that. You have to really be smart about cross training. And then these personalized development plans. And yes, you can get templates, but you got to make sure it's personal, it's unique, it's tailored to that individual. And I'm a big fan of calling them roadmaps, okay, to achieve their goals. And of course, you want them to have SMART goals, right? What does SMART stand for? One thing is it needs to be specific. You need to be able to measure it somehow, some way. It has to be aligned with the direction of the company. It also has to be realistic, and there has to be a time frame. But I would encourage you to customize it to the individual, because some individuals come in and they don't want to be a part of a really aggressive growth organization, or they don't want to be promoted and things like that. So if you automatically start putting them in that category, it's like, hey, Bob, you start here, we're going to promote you every 6 to 8 months. They might not like that. Okay. But some of the things you want in that personalized development plan is maybe they have some one-on-one coaching. Right? We've done it where we have resources, and we have extended partners of ours that I've paid for executive coaching right out of the gate. I've paid for one-on-one coaching with them. Okay. So figure out what helps them grow and who they want to become. Okay. And then set it up that way. The other thing is make sure you have a feedback loop. A lot of organizations that I meet, they put together development plans, or the ones that are somewhat good, they put together development plans and then they set it and forget it. Don't do that. It should fall in the category of what I call PDCA: plan, do, check, and adjust. You should be adjusting these development plans, if not monthly, quarterly, to get a good feel for what's going on. So it's very, very important. And you might get into the point where if someone's not productive at work, maybe they were a really sharp looking individual as far as their resume and their experience, and then you got them into the organization and you found like, hey, what's going on? I learned this years ago, and it was a book that Sam Walton wrote from Walmart. And he says, really think about the person as an individual, because they're going to go through stuff at home too. And I know we have to be careful with HIPAA laws and all that, but understand there's a time when you have to show people that you care. And if they're distracted at home and things are frustrating there's all types of things that you can use to help them out, play assistance programs or whatever. But what I have found is if a person is on the right track with their home life, there's a really high probability they're going to be on track at work. And if they're not, it's going to go vice versa. Okay, so don't be afraid to ask them about, and be careful to check with your HR team, right? But ask them questions that spark understanding of, do they need help? Don't they need help? Do they want help? And then build those into those development plans. Now, as we shift and we talk about, okay, it all sounds good. We found the people, we got them on board, we're developing them. We're going to have some challenges as things evolve, because sometimes you need the people before you get the business. Sometimes you get the people or the business before you get the people. So one of the things you run into as a business owner, small business owners, is budget constraints. And you think, Frank, I can't do all this. I can't do these things. Well, they are real. Budget constraints are real. But think about this, and we can talk later, or there's lots of resources SBAM has, is you don't have to do a big outlay of cash to do this stuff. A lot of this is just how you talk to people. Do you smile when they come in? Do you shake their hand? Do you actually sit down with them and listen to them? I had one of my one-on-ones recently, and the individual said to me is like, I just like that every week you're there and it's on the calendar and I can talk to you and you just listen. My other job, they canceled on me half the time, didn't show up, didn't follow up with me. Okay. So some of these are table stakes. Remember I said in the beginning, methods are many, principles are few. Methods always change, principles never do. Some of the simplest principles don't cost a lot of money. You just have to care, you have to be engaged, and you have to do them consistently. And then I have heard this, there's limited time and resources, okay? Especially with those that are growing and don't have a really big HR staff. But realize if you don't do some of these things, then what I talked about earlier, 30% of them are going to leave. And you want to talk about not having time to do it, then you're really going to be in a rut. So you have to have a strategy. Now, if you don't have a strategic plan, you should get with somebody to help you. We do that, and there's a lot of resources to do that, but you should have a people strategy. If your business, I don't care if you're a 3-person contractor, right? Or you're a 100-person manufacturer, you should have a people strategy. There's things that I'm a big fan of, like every so often, every month or every quarter, do you look at your staff and say, what's the probability of so-and-so leaving? How would we know? Is it high? Is it low? What do we need to be talking about? Okay. How are we going to retain and motivate these individuals? You should be doing that on a consistent basis. So that people strategy is important. Then when you shift here, because I'm talking to small business owners, you're going to deal with this. So be aware, larger companies often throw really big salaries at folks. So you might say, Frank, well, why should I talk about that with my staff? Well, if you don't, you're crazy, my opinion, right? Because others are going to be talking to them. If they're good, you're promoting them on social media, they're out, they're having results, they're at a 4th of July party, they're talking to other people, they are going to get recruited. That is why, go back to what I've talked about for 20, 30 minutes here, is if they feel valued and they feel like what they're doing matters, which is maybe part of the bigger purpose, they know that there's a career path, they know that there's development, they know you're listening to them, they know that you care. You do those 3 questions every week with them with, like I said, number 1 is what got you lit this week? What stressed you out? What can we do to help you? That's going to mitigate some of the big shiny objects. I'm going to tell you a story again. Years ago, because we did a lot of this stuff the right way for a long time, but you're still going to get those individuals, those candidates that think the grass is greener on the other side. And you're going to lose some of them. I just don't want you to lose 30%. I'd rather you lose 10% because that's normal. Or that would be more feasible, I should say. But I had an individual, we just had given him a raise and he was doing really well. And then somebody told him to talk to another company because they were looking for some good talent. So he had a conversation with them. And he shared way too much. And then he called me up one day and he said, hey, Frank, I want to talk to you. I said, what's going on? He said, I just got an offer to work at such company. And I said, oh, tell me about it. Now, most people get upset, get all excited. I said, oh, well, tell me about it. What happened? He starts telling me, and I didn't get into defending or justifying all the things we've done. I started asking him questions. And I said, hey, Luke, let's start here. First of all, I appreciate you sharing it with me. And I'm glad you brought it to my attention. He's like, really? I go, yeah. So let's talk about it. I said, before we get into the conversation, I got to ask you a question. Do you want me to approach this as someone that you report to or a friend? Because I feel like we've built a pretty good friendship. So what kind of lens do you want me to have on for this conversation? So he tells me, and I said, okay, well, walk me through it. So he walks me through some things. And through the conversation, what I found, 80% of what he was looking for, we had. Okay. The culture, the people, the trajectory of a career path. But he could not overcome the amount of money that they were throwing at him. And so I had to make a decision. And I was taught early on for some very, very quality, solid business folks, be careful of actually trying to negotiate compensation with people if you're doing the right things. And so his question to me after going through this for about an hour, he's like, hey, if you can just match their salary, I'll stay. And I said, oh, I really appreciate that, but can't do that. Why is that? I said, well, do you have a fair salary for the work that you do? Yeah. Do we do market analysis on a bi-yearly basis? We do. Did you just get a raise? We did. Do you feel encouraged and valued here? I do. I said, well, man, from that standpoint, I would encourage you, if it's just about the money, I would encourage you to take that job. I said, in the short term, it might look better, but shifting gears, I'm gonna talk to you like a friend for a second here. The grass isn't always green on the other side, and here's what I've experienced. Now, I won't go into too much more detail, but I'll tell you this. That person a year and a half later called me up and said, Frank, I should have listened to you. And I said, well, that's okay, man. Right? You'll figure it out on your journey. But realize if you're doing these things, you're going to minimize people stealing your staff just for money. If you're not doing a lot of these things, be prepared to be above 30% because people, they don't have to throw much at them. It could be a 2-5% raise and they're leaving you. So just be really careful there. So overcoming some of those challenges as we shift gears. If you look at the screen here, so here's some things, some low cost strategies you can do. I talked about a few of them earlier, right? Prioritize free or low cost solutions, but make sure they impact how they feel and how they're supported and valued. You can do peer-to-peer recognition. This is a lost art, right? You can talk about that. Share team goals to reinforce purpose. You create a little bit of that competition so people they don't have time for the noise. And then do some team building activities. There's all kinds of team building activities that you can do to help encourage and support individuals on these strategies. Then focus on quick wins. We talked about this earlier with the belt that we use, but focus on some quick wins, right? It could be they got their business plan done. They've been showing up on time and they're staying late, a little bit late. They're actually contributing when they're not asked to. And I like to look at it as I'm a simple thinker, believe it or not. But the first step is, are you getting a grip with them personally? So are you getting a grip with them? And then number two is, are you getting momentum? Are you hearing things like, man, I was telling my wife or my husband or my boyfriend or girlfriend or whoever it is about how awesome it is to work here. Ooh, say that again. You're getting momentum. And if you're a leader, if you're a manager or you're a leader or you're someone senior leadership, you should be walking around or being with them and listening for this kind of stuff. Streamline your hiring process. There's ways to streamline it. Okay. We talked about single employee recognition programs, calling people out for doing the right things. We're big fans of a tool called the collaborative way. And one of it is acknowledge and appreciation and being specific. And then the last one there is have some flexible work arrangements. Be flexible. And then leverage some of your networks. I'm a big fan of doing this. We just hired a new guy. I'll actually bring him around some of my networks. So, I'm a leader at our organization. I'm a shareholder, the majority shareholder here. But I still bring some of our new folks around my networks. Why would I do that? There is power in this thing called edification. So if I've served an organization or served a company for a long period of time, it's better that they hear it from them than for me to tell them. And that's part of building that culture of collaborative community support and motivation, because they're probably thinking, hey, I wonder if my centers of influence will talk about me one day like that. So that is vital to do. So these are some things you can do to overcome some of those challenges. This is a busy slide, but if you're looking for tools and resources, there are tons of resources on training. There's different online platforms. And these are some that our team, our operational team, just threw out to me that they've seen or used in the past. So if you look on the left side of the screen, you can look at many of these items here. LinkedIn Learning is really popular. You look at the middle, right? I know SBAM supports a lot of different HR organizations along with this. And then on the right side, SHRM is huge, Indeed's big. So these are different things, tools, and resources to create reviews and business plans. And I won't go too far in this, but I believe that the old school way of saying someone, did they meet or exceed their expectations? That's really not a good approach. Because if they consistently exceeded expectations, then your expectations probably weren't high enough. There's different things to do that actually let them know that they're doing a really good job or there's areas to improve. Some of the old tools, if I were you, I'd dust them off and talk to someone and redo those, because they're not being leveraged the right way and people get a bad taste in their mouth. And I'll give you an example. You have this old school system, and some people probably still use it, where you do like a 1, a 2, and a 3. And 1 is below expectations, 2 is meets, 3 is exceeds. Not a fan of it. But what happens is you have this meeting with, Bob, and then you have it with Sally. What do you think Bob and Sally are going to do? You might think, oh, they're not going to talk to each other. Yeah, they are. And then what happens is Bob tells Sally, like, hey, you know what? I got all threes except one. Ooh. And then all of a sudden, this, I call it transcendental mischief, starts happening, right? Head trash. Okay. So you got to be careful. There's other ways to lift up, give feedback, do development plans, do reviews to help them be excited about what they're doing and knowing there's a growth trajectory to their career. So, key questions to consider as we move forward. Here's some key questions for you as we start to wind down. We have 5 minutes, so we're going to be winding down here. So here's some key questions to consider. One is, what are your biggest talent management challenges? What are your biggest talent management challenges? Ask your team. Don't just think about them yourself. And if you don't have a team, ask your wife or your husband or someone around you. What are they? Because maybe there's some blind spots that you have. Okay. The other question is, what are 1 to 2 key strategies that you're going to implement on a go forward basis? And you might even say this, Frank, before this webinar, we didn't even have a people strategy. Start there. And then we can help figure out what that people strategy is, right? There's a lot of different resources to start the process, but write down a couple things that you're going to do strategically to improve on a go forward basis after today. And then what resources do you need to implement them? You might say, I have no idea. I started my business last year. It's just me. I get it. Or you might say, I've tried these things before and they didn't work. Totally understand that too. What are some other resources that you need? And we're here to help you if you need some of those, and we'll guide you. I'm a fan of guiding individuals. I'm not just looking to be your consultant or insurance broker. We will help you with some of those things and give you some direction. And then how you measure your success. How do you know if what you're doing is successful? So if you want to reach out to us, I'm going to stop sharing my screen here in just a moment, but you can look at our screen, my screen here. You can reach out to us. You can go to our website. You can fill something out there. It's iCOR with no E, ICOR advantage.com. You can email me. You can stop by our office on Leonard Street. It's 2 blocks down from the Mitten. Everyone in Grand Rapids knows where the Mitten is, and we can help you where needed.
All right. Thank you so much, Frank. I think you definitely gave us a lot to think about and a little homework to do on our ends. I did have a question come through talking about benefits. So if if you're unable to really budget for health insurance, the costs are obviously quite expensive. Do you have other solutions or suggestions for people who can't provide those types of benefits to their team?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And we do offer benefits to companies, so I actually know a lot about them. And so there's several different things you can do. Group benefits are expensive, and we were getting increases on a yearly basis. But there are things like ICRAs or going to the exchange, or there's other organizations that I know people use, Samaritan Ministries. There's a lot of low cost items that you can actually look into. And I don't want to get too far in this, but if we strategize or you have someone strategize with your leadership, there's certain tax advantages and certain things that qualify for someone under certain thresholds of incomes that will get subsidized from the state. And I know people that aren't paying anything for it, even with the 20-30% increases. So it just depends on the individual, what they're looking for, and things of that nature. But there are strategies outside of just going to the normal BUCA plans with the Blue Crosses and the Priority Health and the United Care Consortiums and all that.
All right, we didn't have any other questions come through, so I think we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. Thanks everybody for tuning in today. We actually have another webinar opportunity tomorrow. I think it's number 12 in the SBAM series of the Earned Sick Time Act and how to comply. So if you haven't tuned in yet to one of those webinars, or if you have some questions about ESTA, register now. It's tomorrow at 2 o'clock. So Frank, thank you so much for being here today. Thank you for your support as an SBAM member. And I hope we'll see all of you again on another webinar soon. Have a great
Thanks,
day.
Sarah. Have a great day.